Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am the stepson of Krypton,
And I'm Mantis.
and this is You, Me, and DC. Today's episode is Marvel versus DC, the James Gunn saga. We wanted to bring this episode for a little while now. We do plan to do a larger Marvel versus DC comparison, but this one being important because of the upcoming projects and announcements by DC involving James Gunn. So we thought it would be important as DC fans, obviously, to kind of discuss our feelings on everything that happened with Marvel and James Gunn, and some hopes and expectations and comparisons to some of the DC projects that he's got planned.
Yeah, we're going to kind of touch on some of the things he did with Marvel and some things he's scheduled to do with DC, clearly, but also dive into said reasons he was fired from Marvel projects or Disney, or I guess I don't know who. I guess it was Disney that ended up canning him, but
yeah, it was Disney that ended up finally, I guess, saying, hey, since they own almost everything now, they get the final say so. So kind of just for anybody who's not as familiar with James Gunn and what he's done for Marvel, he was the writer and director on all three Guardians of the Galaxies. He was the writer, director, and executive producer on the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special. He did.
Wait, that was a thing?
Yeah, that was a thing.
Oh.
It was a live action. Okay. It was a thing. Okay. I haven't seen it, to be fair, though.
I haven't either.
If I'm gonna watch a holiday movie, it's gonna be like Bad Santa.
It's got to be better than the Star Wars one, right? Like,
I can't imagine much worse, than the Star Wars one. So, but then he was the executive producer on I Am Groot. I think that's had 5 episodes, something like that.
Is that
I haven't seen it.
Is that like an animated, or is it?
I think it is animated. Let us know in the comments if I'm wrong, because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to look it up and delve into I Am Groot, whether it's animated or it's just Groot being Groot.
It's literally a picture of a real life tree for like 45 minutes. That's all it is.
Just watching it grow and leaves falling off. But so I'm not gonna, so if you want to let us know down in the comments, because I'm not even going to waste the time to look up and see it, because it's not something I'm going to watch. No offense to Groot and all, but and then he was the executive producer on Endgame and Infinity War. So I didn't actually know that up until here recently. So, when you think about all those projects he's done for Marvel, those have been wildly successful. Obviously, Avengers Endgame and Infinity War are in like the top 5 highest grossing movies ever, with crazy high Rotten Tomatoes scores. I think Endgame got 94%, and then Infinity War had like 85% Rotten Tomato. And then, of course, Guardians of the Galaxy, the first one, it got 92% on its Rotten Tomatoes score. And then the other 2 are in like the mid 80s. So, things that have been pretty popular, both with the tomato meter and then also audience scores. I have not seen Volume 3 yet. I think
I've not either.
Still out in theaters. It might have come to like paid
streaming
if you want to go on streaming. I don't think it's on like Disney Plus yet free, which is when my cheap ass will catch it. It's when it becomes free.
Yep.
On there. So I'm interested to see how the 3rd volume goes. Now I know, and Mantis, correct me if I'm wrong here, but the firing of James Gunn from Marvel came in 2018-ish. I think it was right while they were starting to work on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah, I think so. It was right around there. The funny thing was the tweets, and this is the stupidest thing, like the tweets that they got all pissed off about him about were from like 2008 and 9 or something, like 10 years ago from previous. Like, and don't get me wrong, like there's some questionable ones if you're reading it as non-satirical, I guess. There's some weird ones. Like, for instance, one of them said The Hardy Boys and the mystery of what it feels like when Uncle Bernie fists me. Okay. Mary Matthews just told me a story about how a monkey jerked off to to completion on a kid on the set of Max Kibley's big movie. Like, there's some clearly they're jokes. I mean, obviously, like these things didn't happen. There's not a monkey jerking off to some kid on a movie set, clearly. But I think it kind of maybe his political leaning. It could have been one of two things. His political leanings, and I don't know what his political affiliation is, but it really doesn't matter if it's not what quote unquote the elites are in Disney. If you don't have their viewpoint on things and you voice that, then they will get mad and banish you, which is what they did with Gina Carano. In this case, I don't think that's particularly what happened. I think they were pressured into it. And don't get me wrong, like, I'm not saying a private business can't make decisions about their employees that affect their image that they want to portray. Cancel culture isn't necessarily about a company firing a person that breaks their rules or their aesthetic they're trying to portray. Like we talked about this before with like Hollister and Hollister, I don't even know if they're still around, but back in the day, yeah. So like Hollister, it's kind of like Hooters, right? Like Hooters chicks, you need to be attractive with Hooters.
Boobies!
So with like Hollister, like you need attractive employees. You want attractive people to portray your products and your services. So I have no problem with Hollister not hiring fat people or Hooters not hiring women that do not have well-endowed chests. It makes sense, However,
or dudes to rock the banana hammock in those freaking orange spandex shorts.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. These are just examples. So I have no problem with private companies making those decisions. I think the cancel culture problem comes in with the mobs and the boycotts and the, well, I don't like this person's views, and so we should just get rid of them because we can't agree on it. Completely different situation when you get attacked online by hundreds of these people who are delusional and can't take a joke, right? And that's at least where I stand on the whole, him getting let go over. Don't get me wrong, I wouldn't tweet any of these things, but they're hilarious. They are.
Here's
funny.
the thing, though, and you said it in when you were just talking there, hundreds of people. Okay, we're talking similar when we talked with the Bud Light issue, the last video we just did. Which, by the way, if you haven't checked that out yet, do. It is a very, very good video. But a very small portion of the population did not like those or did not find them funny or didn't realize James Gunn's sense of humor, right? And you cancel somebody who's making you a lot of money and making very popular movies. Again, I just went over even the Rotten Tomatoes scores, right? He's helping to make you a lot of money, and you cancel him because of things, again, that happened 3 or 4 years before he ever even joined Marvel and Disney. And you cancel because of that and because of those few people. Whereas most of the rest of the freaking country loves his sense of humor, loves his movies, and loves what he does in the superhero genre. So again, maybe not focus on your political views sitting atop your ivory tower, and focus on what's making you money and what your actual consumer base wants.
Right. And I mean, he did issue an apology, a big apology. I think it was through several tweets because it was kind of long winded, but the general consistency of all of those was, he said, I apologize for humor that may have hurt people. Truly felt sorry. For the record, these are jokes. I wasn't living them out. It's a pretty weird statement to make, but I feel it's obvious that was the case. But he's still going to apologize. I assume this was after the fact that he got fired, so it's not like, well, you apologize or we're going to fire you, type of situation. they just decided to go ahead and let him go, which is kind of interesting because the jokes are, they're adult. I would say they're adult. They're funny, and I get if like kids were following him on Twitter, but again, like these kids shouldn't be on Twitter to view this type of this stuff anyway. So I mean, I don't know. I guess again, like it's like pearl clutching type of going on here. That's just like, come on, like it's clearly a joke. We all know it's a joke. You want to make it into something that it's not so that you can fire me and look virtuous like you're, like you said in your ivory tower, but it's complete bullshit. It's complete bullshit.
And I may end up I'm just going to go ahead and say I may end up having to edit this out of the video. Just depends. This might touch a couple of nerves here, but I'll say the ironic thing is these are the same group of people that are okay with books depicting sex acts among 10-year-old kids in middle school libraries. They're fine with that, right? But him making tweets 20 years ago saying things like this as a joke, no, we're not, we're not okay with that. We're gonna cancel you. Marvel's gonna fire you. And you know what? We talked about this also in the Bud Light video, where the other beer companies needed to step in and say, you know what, you want to do this? Fine, we'll take all of these people. DC did that. DC says, all right, you want to fire him over something stupid. Guess what? He's going to come over and he's going to produce the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. And I think it shows. So the original Suicide Squad with Jared Leto and Will Smith. Sorry if anybody actually sat through that movie more than once, but it did terrible. I think its Rotten Tomato score was like 26 or something. It was god awful. And then he comes around and makes the Suicide Squad, and it gets a 90. Wildly popular. And then they spawn the Peacemaker show on HBO Max, which, if you haven't seen that, go watch it. Hilarious. Great show. And John Cena does great in it. And now he's co-chairman and CEO of DC Studios.
Yeah, and I guess he did get clearly he got reinstated for Guardians 3. I guess that was made by Disney Studio leadership and Marvel Studios, both to reinstate him, which is kind of funny. I wonder if they had something already planned and filmed things and maybe tested on an audience or two, and it was complete trash. And they're like, okay, maybe since he apologized, that left the door open for us to bring him back, right? So let's just bring him back and we'll see how everyone takes it, right? Like, I mean, I have to imagine that's what happened.
It's like, otherwise we're going 8th season of Game of Thrones bad, right? You're gonna tell there's a difference, right? Like,
and it kind of ran through the same thing with Star Wars, right? The new Star Wars series where there was different directors. I know, may Star Wars rest in peace. Thoughts and prayers. Yeah, and so maybe they were like, well, this didn't work too well when we had a director, then brought in another one for the second movie, and then brought the first guy back, and it was even worse than the other two. Like, it's like, all right, we just need some continuity here and just bring him back and get him through, right? So who knows what actually happened on the back? Maybe you guys know what actually happened. Let us know. But I would be interested to actually wonder why they decided to.
That's another one of those things that I was going to look up and research, not for this video particularly, but, just as one was curious. But I'm like, you made me sit through those movies. I'm done. Like, for everybody watching, I don't know. Like, I was old enough when the new trilogy with episodes 1, 2, and 3 came out. I was
the prequel trilogy.
Yeah, the prequel trilogy. But I grew up on the originals. Obviously, I'm a child of the 80s, so grew up on the originals. So watching those prequels, man, and you're just like, oh God, it was rough. And man, if you didn't manage to outdo yourselves.
I like you. I grew, like, the prequels came out when I was a kid, so I have a special place in my heart for the prequels, even though they aren't the greatest. and it's not story. Well, it is kind of story based. No one really gives a shit about intergalactic politics and economics.
The first three barely mention the intricacies of intergalactic trade law.
But the stuff that he did there with some of the CGI decisions on the special edition of the old trilogy, kind of, I'm just like, George, what are you doing? Anyway, we're getting off on a tangent here, but it kind of does tie in to what that, like we were talking about with James Gunn and continuity. But I'm interested also, and I didn't actually research this either, but like why did they let him walk to DC? Or maybe he wanted to go to DC. I mean, there's not going to be an honest answer to that, right? Because there's been several articles of him you decide that you got hired by DC, which made you this, and it's always, oh, I've loved DC forever. I'm my favorite character is Superman, and I've got all these old comic books and this. Like that's great. That's great. Face you're putting on there, and that's fine. I totally get it. But I want to know, like, I want an honest answer. You know what I mean?
Well, I will bet you part of it is, because again, when he started Guardians of the Galaxy, the original, it was a year after Man of Steel came out, maybe 2. So he could have gone over to the DC side, and it seems like he chose Marvel. And I'm sure a lot of it now has to do with, you're kind of shunned, right? So you're going to go to the competition. It's kind of like with the beers, with the Bud Light. Like, you piss off your core drinkers, they're going to go to your biggest competition. That's what you do. So he probably like, hey, I'll come over. I've got some ideas for this project. And again, DC's made some terrible decisions, but this was a good one, right? They're rebounding. Although I would have still loved to see the Snyderverse play out, and we were so close.
I'm a fan of
Darkseid.
Yeah.
We were so close to having Darkseid.
I'm a fan of the Snyderverse, and
I wish we would have kept it.
I would, even if they do it as a side project, I'd be fine with it. Like, and kind of going back to the whole, why did James Gunn get, over to DC? And it is probably, I would say, largely due to the fact of his work on the Suicide Squad, and probably Peacemaker too, like you said. I haven't seen, I don't know. I'm just not a fan of Peacemaker. It's okay. In my opinion, it's okay.
Have you watched the series?
I've seen the first couple episodes, just didn't particularly care for it. So,
what is wrong with you?
I don't know. Just didn't like it. But I think it was primarily due to the Suicide Squad and Peacemaker. And then, they mentioned they were looking for someone to right the ship because, like you said, DC has been a trash heap, smoking pile of dog shit for the longest time. Aside from a few movies.
About that, real quick, I'm going to play devil's advocate conspiracy theory. We've I think only stated this off camera, but we have talked about there's a Marvel or Disney plant in DC that is trying to ruin DC, right? Because that's one of the only things that makes sense with everything they're doing.
It has to.
What if that person is the one who brought James Gunn over? And they're like, oh, we'll do a couple of no-name projects like Peacemaker, stuff like that, and be successful. People will be pumped about it, right? And then they trash the Snyderverse, and then they're just going to run it. I mean, this is going to be the nail in the coffin, right? This is what's going to do it. I hope that's not but what if? Because the thing is, they brought out and they put another like $70 million to do the Snyder cut of the Justice League. And people loved it. I mean, it was so widely popular. Like, you were doing good.
That was mainly an HBO thing, right? Like,
yeah, it was HBO.
Right.
I say 70 million. That may be an incorrect number. It may have been 20 million now that I think about it. There's so many numbers floating around. But either way, it was millions of dollars in reshoots to bring the Snyder cut out, and everybody loved it. I mean, it was wildly successful. People, there was petitions online demanding they bring out the Snyderverse and the Snyder cut. And people got excited for it. And then it's like, what happened? What did you do? I get you can't help that the Flash went crazy. But, like, what was this with Wonder Woman? You had a great first movie, and you just turned the second one to dog shit.
Yeah, and I think, James Gunn and them coming in, I don't think it was particularly his idea to let Henry Cavill go and cut the Snyderverse and whatever. I think from what I read, that was a call from the top, that one of the reasons they wanted to bring him in. And when he got in, they were like, by the way, we're resetting things because there's not enough substance here to keep the boat afloat. The Zack Snyderverse of movies. I agree with you. They're good, especially if you watch the what's his name, the Josh Whedon version, and then watch the Zack Snyder version. It's not even like it's the same movie. It looks like a completely different movie. I get it why they want to cut ties and start over. It hurts me because Henry Cavill is such a great Superman. I like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She did great. It's not her fault. The second movie, Patty Jenkins, or the fuck it was, that wrote that pile of dog shit, along
Patty
with
Jenkins.
Patty
hire.
Jenkins. Yeah, and whatever like community college reject they built or they paid to do the CGI in that movie, because it is god awful. So it doesn't surprise me, but still, yeah, you're like, oh man, why? It's almost like a what if. Like, it's like, why didn't James Gunn come in like 6 or 7 years ago to DC? Where would they be now? Because they wouldn't have rebooted it. They probably would have still been in the midst of everything. And I wonder, makes me wonder what would have happened. And who knows? Yeah, maybe James Gunn comes in and everything flops. Like, DC is cursed. Like, it's honestly a thing now where they're too far gone as a comic book entity to make it work, and it's never going to happen.
I hope that's not the case because, again, I do love Marvel characters and I do love a lot of the movies in the MCU. I'm not hating on them. I do think, and I want to say this, I'm sorry to anybody who's a massive MCU fan, but I do think that, and I will say not Marvel, but MCU fans, they give a little way too much credit and leniency to Marvel films and not enough to DC. But I give credit to Marvel where it's due, and the movies they've put out, like a lot of them have been great. They did the timelines, they did a lot of things great, and DC kind of dropped the ball on it. But DC has my favorite characters.
I think DC's characters just totally blow
especially
Marvel's
their villains
out of the water. Yes,
especially the villains.
I just think
villains.
They have better superheroes. They have better villains. It's literally how they marketed it and put the projects together is where Marvel shined, right? I still don't like there's ones in there like Miss Marvel, the whole Brie Larson thing,
Captain Marvel, yeah.
It's just, which I don't know. I don't know what the hell happened to her. She's hot and she's just a bitch. Like, I don't know. Anyway, getting off on a tangent there, but this is a whole kind of thing with DC. I could have swore I read this, maybe I imagined it, that CW is going away from DC properties. Like, they're not involved in that anymore.
So with the end of the Arrowverse, which with Flash is on its final season, Superman and Lois has basically been taken over by HBO Max, and they're funded. The primary funding for especially the special effects is by HBO Max. And spoiler alert, like, you'll notice there's not a lot of ties. Well, there's not really hardly any ties to CW and the Arrowverse in Superman and Lois. So they're trying to. We don't know how many more seasons we'll get of Superman and Lois, but they're trying to stop all of that on the CW because it's just not. With the end of Arrow and stuff, it's just not working anymore. And Black Lightning and Supergirl are living proof of that, right?
Yeah, it says according to a new report, CW is expected to cancel another 2 DC shows left on the network, including Superman and Lois, as the ongoing reimagining of CW continues. Cuts of the network's scripted content have been plentiful. Since the majority stake in CW purchased last year by broadcast group Nexstar, the emphasis has been less and less on scripted series like that of the Arrowverse and its many other DC properties, and more on low-cost, unscripted content and even live sports. So, very interesting.
But if you notice, and this is one of there's two big projects coming out, and they're probably going to be a straight to some streaming service, probably straight to HBO Max because it's DC. You have the Lanterns that's not been set yet for a release date, and then you have Booster Gold, which
and so he's involved in those projects.
Yes, James Gunn's going to be the executive producer on those, and then of course, writer and director on Superman Legacy, which is the reboot Superman movie in 2025.
We've discussed this too. Like that's going to be the make it or break it. The rest of these things don't matter. Like honestly, quite honestly, if they make Superman Legacy, if he makes it work, if it's good, the rest of it will follow.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Again, so you have your fan base. Everybody who is going to be a big fan of the show loves Henry Cavill as Superman. That he is like you even said when we talked about like how like I still kind of have a place in my heart for Christopher Reeves as being my favorite Superman, but Henry Cavill's like a really close second. A lot of people hold Henry Cavill as their Superman. And now you're boom, we're just going to be done with it. I'm worried. We've already seen what happens when one Marvel person comes over, hence Joss Whedon coming over. All right. I'm worried what kind of tone are you going to set? Because the Peacemaker, Guardians of the Galaxy kind of tone that James Gunn's really known for isn't going to work with a character like Superman. Okay, people already kind of didn't like that it was kind of too dark for Superman. The perverted kind of humor, that's definitely not going to work for a Superman movie.
No, yeah, you're right. Like the Suicide Squad and all the Guardians movies, the characters are kind of odd and funky and funny and comical, right? Like that's not how Superman should be serious, right? Like it should be a serious movie, in my opinion. I mean, you can have jokes here and there. I mean, that's kind of what Clark Kent was for, right? But I agree with you. If they try to go with the same tone, if he tries to go with the same tone that he did with Suicide Squad, it's not going to work. It won't work.
Not for a Superman movie. And really, that jokey kind of stuff is not going to work for a Batman movie. Like Batman's even worse because it's always supposed to be dark. But neither of those are going to work for your two most iconic characters. Now, like, okay, he's doing Booster Gold, right? That'll be perfect for a Booster Gold movie.
Right.
Lantern.
I mean, Shazam was funny, right?
Shazam was funny.
Like it would work. It would work with Shazam, like that goofy stuff. It's kind of the same. I mean, yeah, I agree. Booster Gold, he could do it with. The Lanterns could be done that way until
Hal Jordan
shit
is
hits the
kind
fan.
He's kind of a smart ass, like Jon Stewart was more the serious one.
Right.
So like it could be done, and it'd be interesting to see because everybody kind of forgets that. As much as, and this is when I say the MCU fans like to forget, nobody knew who Iron Man was before Robert Downey Jr. took on that role. Nobody would have, they started with basically a no-name character for a lot of Marvel people. Wasn't somebody you would think would launch a multi-billion-dollar franchise. But of course, Robert Downey Jr. made it work and made it awesome. So maybe they do that with Booster Gold and Lanterns. They start. He's already in a hole that he's got to dig himself out of because we all remember the Green Lantern movie. So you're already kind of like everybody's going to base it off of, is it going to be terrible like that movie? Which, I mean, I don't think it was that bad, but it wasn't great.
It wasn't great. I think the biggest part of it was, Ryan Reynolds playing the same character that Ryan Reynolds always plays in all his movies. And then you brought in Parallax, who again is like it's like we talk about. It's like bringing in Doomsday in the first movie. Like it just doesn't make any sense. Like you got to set that shit up. You don't want your most powerful villain to come in, right? Do Sinestro. There's other ones you could do with that. And I don't know. That old movie, I agree. It's not as bad as everyone makes it out to be, but it was pretty bad. And the new movie can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Unless he starts pushing some woke bullshit.
Lanterns is going to be a series.
Yeah. It can't be that bad unless they do some woke bullshit.
So what I'm hopeful for is, since Lanterns is going to be on HBO Max, it's going to have a good budget. So the CG won't be terrible, especially when you see so many movies getting hit for bad CGI lately. Like, I'm hoping they'll put some behind there, because obviously he's a guy that has a magic ring as as his power. Don't make it corny. Don't make the CGI terrible, and I think you'll be okay.
Yes, the CGI, if there is ever a show in here that it needs to be good, it has to be Green Lantern, because like the core thing of his powers is he makes goofy shit with his ring. Like, he makes a big hand with an anvil and smashes people with it, or he makes a cannon that shoots shit. Like, that's the goofy shit that goes on in Green Lantern comics.
Okay.
So it's hard to do that, man. It's going to be hard without it being corny.
Okay, now here's the thing, and get your opinion on this. Do you lean heavier into it? So, like, are you going to have the hand slap, and then in green letters it just says "pow" or "smack"? Just to really play into it as kind of more satirical, or do you try to play it where he's because nobody liked, even when he had the F-35, like he did those at the end, and he's trying to escape the sun's gravitational pull, which there's no way in hell a F-35 would take you out of the sun's gravity. But, nobody even liked that. They thought that was corny. So I'm like, what do you want, people? Like, what could he do that's not
the character,
corny?
right? Like, I think you have to come to a realization that, like, that's how his character works.
Well, the problem
and that's okay.
Is Green Lantern, again, he's a no-name character. Well, I say no-name. He's not. He's one of the founders of the Justice League. But for people who don't read comics, he's a no-name character, right? People know, even if you're not a comic book fan, you know Batman, you know Superman, you probably know Wonder Woman, and you know Flash, right? Those are your big ones, and maybe Aquaman, I doubt it, but if you don't read comics, you know those four, right? Most people don't know, if you don't read comics or have seen the TV shows, stuff like that, you don't know Green Lantern. You did nothing to set up the backstory of the Green Lanterns. I mean, you got like a 4-minute little intro, right?
Yeah.
So people didn't know what the hell this was. They just see this magic ring making all this weird shit. So again, and then
maybe they do have to lean into it.
Then you bring in this, like I said, one of his most powerful villains, and you had to wrap all that up in an hour-and-a-half movie. And I'm like, you just can't do that. And that's where, at least with TV shows, you can stretch it out, and you can do flashbacks and shit like that.
I'm with you. Like, if you're gonna do that type, like, you have to lean into it. I don't think there's any way around it, because at the core of the character, he does goofy shit, and that can be fine. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But if you're gonna do it, then don't half-ass it.
So now here's the question: where do you think it's going to go? Because obviously people had an issue with the DCEU, and I could be wrong on this too, but I think they're just going DCU with being too dark. Okay. Like, they didn't like it. People bitched that Batman killed people, which, FYI, for those people, if you go back and watch Batman Returns, Tim Burton's 80s, early 90s version of it, he kills several people in that movie, okay? So don't give me this, oh, Batman never kills anybody. You've not read all the comics, and you've not read the Frank Miller Batman, so don't even come at me with that. I'm sorry. But there's too dark. Even Superman was too dark, and all of this was too dark. So, obviously the Shazam kind of goofy, funny works a little bit for that character. But where does James Gunn take it? Do you go back to the light side, or do you try to redo the dark?
It's honestly, for me, it doesn't really matter to an extent. I just don't want to be like, you know, okay, Batman has an opportunity to kill someone, but he doesn't, right? So the bad guy, instead of, you know, doing a flying kick into his chest or his face that would break his neck, he kicks him in the shoulder and then ties him up and blah blah blah, and then that's fine. But what I don't want is him to do the whole misses and ties him up, and then someone come on screen or the cops show up and like, oh, thank God, Batman's such a humanitarian. He's nonviolent. Good job, Batman. Like, that's stupid. If you have to point it out, it's kind of like we talk about strong female leads in movies. You don't point it out. You just do it. You don't. If you point it out, then I'm having to notice that you're pointing it out, and it becomes dumb. So if you're gonna go that way, that's fine. If you're gonna make him where he just, you know, oh yeah, he threw a batarang at a dude's chest and it's fucking killed him because it's a fucking blade like that. It's not like Patton Oswalt. Yeah, it's like he's sleeping.
He's asleep.
Like, that's not a thing, right? Just if you're gonna do it, that's cool. Yeah, if you're gonna do it, that's cool. Like, but either way you do it, you don't have to lean and make sure that it's well known that he's a killer and blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, okay, you know, unless it's built into the story, like, because quite honestly, this stuff, most of us, and I guess I'm speaking, maybe other people don't. Personally, I just want a good story. Like that's it. Like, just make a good fucking story, and make it not woke. Like, because if you make a good story, you don't need to inject all of this other bullshit. It doesn't have to have a, you know, $10 million CGI budget or whatever it costs. Some of those high end ones, like, you know, you don't need that stuff. If it's got a good story, then everything else will work itself out. You know, that's just my opinion, though.
I'd add an extra 0 to that CGI budget for most movies. Usually, it's like $1 million or something for like so many seconds of CGI. Like, I know the original Hulk with Eric Bana came out in early 2000s, it was like $1 million for 16 seconds. And now we'd go back and, you know, people watch and say, oh, that's garbage. Well, back then it was cutting edge. You know, you're comparing technology. You think 10 years, 20 years ago, what technology was, or
do what Tim Burton did. Do what Tim Burton did. It's all practical effects. He built the fucking stage. There was an actual Batmobile that ran and things blew up. Like, I'm okay with it, you know?
And before we go on, and I'm not trying to cut you off because I know we're going to go off on another tangent. We are going to do a whole video on our thoughts on practical versus CGI, because we both are fans of it. Looks so much better when it's practical effects. And, you know,
certain things, yeah, most do. There are clearly certain things you can't do, but
obviously you're not gonna, you know, do that. But, like, you know, I'm sorry. And again, I love the Avengers, like Infinity War saga with Endgame, but 90% of that was shot on a green screen. I mean, Thanos, like, when he has the Reality Stone, you literally can see the wave of the green screen when he just makes it look like a different, like the old Titan. And I'm like, that was just literally a green screen transition. But it worked. I'm not saying, you know, it didn't work, but, like, yeah, it was all right. Well, it's nice to see something practical, especially when you're doing close-ups of things like, you know, Stranger Things on Vecna with season 4. He was practical. That was all makeup, and it looked great.
Horror's the one. I know here we're going on another tangent, but it does kind of apply to superhero movies too. In my opinion, the horror genre is where it really stands out. You know, when you have, and we use the example Alien.
I was just gonna say, are you talking about Aliens?
It's in all other horror genre, in all other movies too. Like, the practical effects of Aliens and Alien, and I think 3 as well, like, are just so great. It looks so awesome. And then for some ungodly reason, they decided to go CGI with the aliens where they're swimming and shit, and I think Resurrection or whatever the hell it was.
That was 4,
And-
yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just like, what is this? This doesn't look scary. Like, you know what looks scary is when it's climbing at you through the ceiling and you get that close up of the mouth and it's like shriveling.
I like to eat people from other planets, especially y'all. I like to eat you with my little mouth too.
And there's that goop shit drink. Like, I mean, it's kind of what, I don't know if you've seen Terrifier, but like that's all practical effects in there, and it's gross and it's, you know, it's crazy looking. So I mean, with regards to superhero movies, it's harder to do because a lot of it is predicated on abilities that are like, you can't make a practical flying person like in space without a green screen and some. I mean, it's just not going to happen, right? So.
Yeah, but like, so they did with Captain America Civil War, because one of my favorite, if I ever need motivation to go do a workout, I'll watch that scene where Chris Evans he's just pulling the helicopter down, you know, Bucky's trying to get away and he's fully extended and he's pulling. Like, they had a helicopter, it was on a rig, but they had it, and he even tells him, he's like, it needs to go to full extension. I have to have my arms fully extended and all that to make it look good, versus him just holding something and stretching his arms out where he's not actually trying to pull. Again, still green screen, but they actually had the rig there and he was trying to hold it and he's trying to pull it to make it look real, so the muscles are flexing and everything like that. So, I mean, that works.
In the opposite side, it's like the Hulk. You know, I wouldn't want to see a practical Hulk. Like, it would look weird as shit.
I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but I'm going to disagree with you, because I think the original Ninja Turtles movie, where they're in practical effect, they're just in costumes, looks better than anything else they've put out thus far.
No, I know that. I'm talking about the Hulk.
I know, I'm just saying that as far as a practical effects costume, like those turtles, even though you can see their mouths in there a little bit, I think still looks pretty damn good.
Yeah, that's what I said. It works for some, but for others, like the Hulk, it does not fucking work. Like, you couldn't do it. It would look weird as shit. And it's,
Quick off the topic here, I want to get your opinion on this. Eric Bana's Hulk, where he got bigger as he got mad. Do you like that, or do you like the Edward Norton, Mark Ruffalo Hulk, where he just kind of stays the one size?
It's not that big a deal to me. Either one's fine. I mean, I like the Eric Bana movie, except for the dog.
That. I'm just going to have to cut that whole part out of this video.
Why?
Because I was expecting you to be like, oh, hey, yeah, dude, I love the fact that as he gets angrier, he gets bigger and stronger, because that was Hulk. But you just ruined that, so I'm going to cut this.
Because I thought you would go, I'm in, Bob. And we would have had a really cool moment, but you kind of ruined the whole thing.
What? I ruined it? That's my opinion.
I asked your opinion as long as it was going to be the exact same as mine.
You're trying to cancel me is what you're doing.
Everything cool that Susan said, you wrecked it.
You're trying to cancel my opinion.
And I am canceling this part of the video, okay? Because I wanted your opinion. I wanted your opinion as long as it was the same as mine. Okay?
Yeah, it fits right in with Marvel, so yeah.
I might leave that in. But you're this close to getting canceled, okay? Just saying.
I mean, let's do it.
All right, leave in the comments if you think I should cancel him for that.
Don't side with him on that. So I guess we need to wrap this up. This is going on for a while. I guess though. It is the final thing. Like you said, do I think James Gunn is going to succeed with what he's doing with DC? I don't really know. From what I've read on some of what he wants to do with Lanterns, and like you said, Booster Gold, sound good. The Superman stuff, where he's not a kid, but he's a teenager almost, I guess is what I read. Okay. You know, it's okay. We'll see what happens. There's some other things that I don't particularly care for, and this is just my opinion. The Amanda Waller thing, I could give two shits about Amanda Waller. I do not find her character interesting or any of that to be worth a shit. And he's apparently put his wife on that project too, which he puts his wife on everything, and that's okay. Don't care as long as it's good. She could be in every fucking movie. Doesn't matter. But the
my
overall
favorite
thing
part with Amanda Waller in the Arrowverse is when she got shot in the fucking head. favorite scene with Amanda Waller. I'm tired of that bitch.
I don't know. I just don't like her character. I just hate it. It's not the actress that plays her in the movies.
They've
or
actually
the
had
show.
some good actresses play Amanda Waller.
Yeah, it's not has nothing to do with that. It's like literally the character. I don't give a shit. I don't care. Because she's kind of a bitch. So
Right.
it's like, like, okay, yeah, good, she's dead. Anyway, whether I think it succeeds or not, like I said before, is gonna, for me, it's clearly gonna reside on Superman Legacy. If Superman Legacy does well and it's a good adaptation of Superman, because we haven't had a good adaptation, in my opinion. A lot of people don't like Man of Steel. I liked Man of Steel.
I love Man of Steel.
Yeah, since then, and DC goes as Superman goes, in my opinion. So if Superman Legacy is good, then the rest of it will be great.
If you can make a good Superman movie, you should be able to make Batman. No offense, but Batman's an easy character to make. Just make him dark and a little bit crazy and all this. He's easy to make. It's like we talked about with Superman games. If you can make a good Superman, everything else should be cake, because he's one of the most difficult characters to bring to TV, movie, and video game.
Yeah.
So we'll
That's
see.
where I stand on it. Where do you stand on it?
I'm worried, to be honest. I'm really worried because I know they're going to give him a lot of latitude, but I'm worried that we aren't out of the woke BS yet, and that some of that's going to find its way into these movies, and that's going to kill it for me, because we didn't get that with any of the other Supermans yet. Like, it dodged the bullet, and with Justice League and everything else like that. Like, I don't want that to ruin my favorite character. I mean, you can see the itty bitty Superman right here. It's my flash drive.
Itty bitty Superman.
Okay. I don't want you to do that with my favorite character and something that stood since 1938. I'm just worried where they're going to take it. Like, I'm on pins and needles right now, waiting to see what's going to happen with the DCU.
Well, I think it's prepare for the worst and hope for the best type of situation. But it wouldn't be any different than any of the other movies or anything DC's done in the past 10 years. So it's par for the course, quite honestly.
Yeah, but we say that, and I prepared for the worst, and they managed to supersede my expectations. So it's like, I don't want to prepare for the worst. Like, I want to prepare for mid-tier, and then hopefully they only go a little below that, right?
Well, yeah, either you need to be great or you need to be so bad it's ridiculous. Being boring is in the middle, right?
My thing is, I don't know, and I could be wrong, but I don't know that some of these, like Spider-Man or even Superman, I don't know that they can handle another reboot so soon. So if you reboot this Superman with Superman Legacy and it does poorly, I don't know that people are going to deal with another reboot again that quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
okay. Yeah.
How far are we from a good Superman movie and where we can have Doomsday or Darkseid in there? I'm going to be in a nursing home by the time this occurs.
As a child of the 80s, when cinema was at its peak, in my opinion, having to deal with so many reboots, not just in superhero movies, but in general, it gets frustrating. It's like, oh, another reboot of this. Oh, okay. Like, it's just like, I don't give a shit anymore. Like, because this is why, I can't remember who it was. Someone went and saw Guardians 3. They said they loved it. And they got the Oppenheimer. This is not DC or Marvel or anything, but they got the Oppenheimer trailer in their in the previews, and they said it looks amazing. And I've seen a couple of trailers and it looks amazing. So there's still good movies being made. They're just, it's so few and far between right now. Technically there's no movies being made because they're still on strike, I think, but we'll see.
Oppenheimer, the guy who created the nuclear bomb, Oppenheimer.
Okay,
yeah. Sweet. Okay, I didn't.
It's got actually, to tie it back into like a DC reference. There, it's I forget the guy's name, but he plays Scarecrow in the Nolan trilogy.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah,
I can't think of his name either. He's just kind of like, but I know who he is. I could.
Yeah. He actually,
I
think if I remember right, he like auditioned to play Batman, but he didn't get it. But they liked him for Scarecrow, so he did.
I think that was a good call. So
yeah, I agree. I mean, he plays an all right Scarecrow. Anyway, yeah, he's supposed to be in that. It looks really good. It's just there, the cinema nowadays is reboots of reboots, and I agree with you. I don't think it could handle another one. I just don't.
Spider-Man's going to be tough enough because supposedly, and again, I don't know how true this is. They're wanting to remove Tom Holland now. Like they're moving away from Tom Holland. I'm like, he's a great Spider-Man. I don't know that Spider-Man's going to handle another reboot in 20-something years. Like this is ridiculous. So we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah, what was supposed to be a 20-minute video like the Bud Light one was supposed to be 10 minutes and it was 48. We're now at 52 minutes. So probably some of this will get cut down. Definitely you are getting canceled on that part. I'm going to edit it so like it'll just be like you sitting there not talking and you agree with me completely. But
yes, I agree with you. Yes.
There you go.
You're exactly right.
That. I will cut that and I will overlay it when I said that. But if you've made it this far with us, we do appreciate it. Definitely give this video a like. Leave your comments down below. And definitely consider subscribing because we got a lot more content on the way. And if there's any discussion topics you would like us to discuss or TV shows or movies that we've mentioned or haven't mentioned that you would want us to see, please let us know down in the comments.
Yep.
All right. And from the stepson of Krypton, I'm going to get me a beer. You guys have a great day. Mantis, we'll discuss more further. All right. Take it easy, guys.
Later.